My name is Steve Evans, and I would like to welcome you to Healing Stream's presentation of Matters of the Heart. This is a show where we discuss the mind-body connection that enables us to understand why it is that our heart matters where our health is concerned. And with me in the studio is Angela McCurdy, who's been on the same kind of journey with me. We walked it, of course, by separate paths, but we've been working in ministry together for a couple of years now, that we've been put on the same page by a series of teachings that brought us to understand the importance of keeping our heart in the peace of Christ in order to find our bodies releasing health.
You know, for so many years I walked around in a daze not realizing that my heart really did matter. And now that I wake up and I can say, today is a good day, because I have learned what the peace of Christ is all about, what that peace that surpasses all understanding. And I can wake up excited. Things may not be perfect in my day, and they never always will be. But through what I have learned through this truth in the scriptures, it is just wonderful to be able to sit here and say, today is a good day. It's been a good week.
Well, we're here to celebrate the fact that God can bring us into a better health by working with our hearts to bring us into the truth. And the truth is, every day is a good day if we can release our emotional life and receive the goodness of our Lord, that He is absolutely loving us and watching over us in every moment, planning our life so that even the troubles we go through are working out towards a good end. There's a lot of reason for our hearts to rejoice and for our hearts to take confidence. And it turns out that these issues are important health issues.
Yes, they are. Yes,
if we don't live in the peace of Christ, or some measure of peace, even if as non-Christians, if we don't know peace in our lives, then trouble is going to show up in our bodies eventually.
Well, we're also living a double life because we're showing to the world this happy face, or supposedly a happy face, like we talked in the last program about wearing a mask. And so we're actually walking around as two different people. This darkness, this fear that this stress, everything that's in us that owns us, and then we're having to portray something out to the world that's not true. And I believe that even complicates the matters even that much more so.
Well, it gets us involved in not searching out what the issues really are. And sometimes we get discouraged and feel like we can't overcome those emotional obstacles in our own life. And that's why God in His mercy provides people that are teachers or equippers. And that's what we like to think of as healing streams, as one way that people can come in and get their hearts mended so that they can live with more peace and freedom. I
was one of those people that did not feel like I would ever be able to overcome that which I felt like truly owned me. I walked around in darkness and stress and fear and also physical problems, and I felt like that was the way that life was going to be. You smiled on the outside and you held everything in, and there was no way out. I had tried 1,001 things, hundreds of things, and nothing seemed to work. I was really held captive.
Well, in the first part of our show, we're going to talk about things that a lot of you can relate to. Like Angela was saying, many people walk around with emotional issues, holding the heart captive. We're going to get in just a moment into some of the science behind the mind-body connection. And in the second part of the show a way out, the way to break the grip of the negative emotions on us that are the stressors to the body. So the first thing I brought in for today is an article I found on the web that is about, does stress really cause heart disease? Now, you hear a lot of talk about things you should eat and exercise, and these are good measures to take. But stress is an important factor. For instance, in this article, it's saying the surge in adrenaline caused by severe emotional stress causes the blood to clot more readily, increasing the risk of heart attacks. There are types of emotional stress that are implicated where heart disease is concerned, and that is often summarized as what's called the type A personality. So can I read a little bit for you about that?
I can tell you all about that just without reading anything. But
you maybe lived that and breathed that. I don't think that was actually my type, and I don't go very deeply into what the types are. They describe actually symptomatic behavior, ways in which we characteristically operate. I don't believe anybody's stuck in a type.
No, they're not.
God wouldn't do that to us.
They're not.
We could actually come out of the negative aspects of things that seem to define our personality. But the type A personality is one often associated with heart attacks. And it's characterized by people that are time sensitive, that are anxious about the clock, that are impatient, that have a chronic sense of urgency and a tendency towards hostility. That's a key element. And that they're very competitive. And these, according to the study, are at a higher risk for coronary artery disease with people with a different personality type.
All right, so let's stop here. Give me the second personality type, because I want to compare it with something here.
All right, now the second personality type is characterized by people that are patient, low-key, and non-competitive. And before you say anything, and if that were genuine, that would be a graced way to live, wouldn't
That's
it be?
exactly right.
To be patient, low-key, and non-competitive actually sets you up to not be a candidate for a heart attack. So that's something to recommend it, but we can't be fooled by appearances.
No,
and I
we
think that's
can't.
where you want to come
That's the
in.
appearances, because I know the two types. I have been the first type A, all of my life. And yes, there is hope for the type A's. We can change, because when peace comes in,
Yeah.
I felt like I no longer had to prove certain things. But also the type B, these low-key, self-assured individuals that you see on the outside, a lot of times they are withdrawing into themselves with anger and stress and fear. They don't want to show it to the world, so they look calm and cool, and they're easygoing, and they don't get in readily fights with somebody in the supermarket. They've got it together on the outside. But type B people that I have found do that I have come across in my life are just as stressed. They don't express it the way someone like me would outwardly express it. So we have to be careful and say, if you see yourself as someone who is in control, that's low-key, it doesn't mean that you're less likely to have a heart attack because that's the way you just express yourself. You could be holding in that inner, what I call toxicness, that can really make your body sick, just as if the outwardly aggressive individual can.
And so hostility can go in two different directions. We can release it towards people, and there it's very obvious. But if we bring it down upon ourselves, inflate our spirit, make us move along kind of below the waves, a level of depression in there, and depression is very damaging to the health. So either way, if anger is coming in, we need to find God's way of letting the anger go out. In fact, he says, be angry, but sin not. So we'll be talking about anger and how to release it in the second portion of the show, because we need to know how to break the grip of a negative emotion like that. But I believe you've got a little bit more in Dr. Colbert's book.
Yes, Dr. Colbert, we love Dr. Colbert. He wrote a book called Deadly Emotions. And this title, this paragraph says, What's Worth Dying For?
Yeah, good question.
What do I really want to hold on to that I'm so proud of, that I've owned for so many years? But he says, without a doubt, hostility, rage, and anger at the top of the list of toxic emotions that generate an extreme stress reaction. He's got hostility in italics. And it truly is. It goes on to say that a hostile person is likely to get angry and become excessively irritated over trivial circumstances that would not upset most other people. I've been told I have a 1.5 second from 1 to 10 in the anger ratio, and I can get there faster than anybody.
0 to 60 in no time at all.
0 to 60 in no time at all.
Yeah, and that gets expressed in a lot of road rage around town. And I'll admit, I'm one of those that I'm kind of low-keyed, and I move along probably the type B personality.
You a closet road rage?
But there are closet road rage. It all stays under the collar.
I'm not
if you're wearing, I'll tell you what, if you want to drive better, wear a collar like this, because it just tightens up on your driving performance when you're dressed in clericals. But just the same, folks, and we're not picking on hostility today. We are equal opportunity employers when it comes to negative emotions.
This is so
Every
true.
one of them is damaging to our health. But hostility releases adrenaline and cortisol, and these are in large amounts, inconsistent amounts. These are very damaging to our health. I've got a list here of some of the things that excessive adrenaline can bring about in the body. Gastric ulcers, for one thing. Skin disorders of various kinds. High blood pressure and hypertension. Heart and circulatory system damage. Constriction of blood vessels. Increased cholesterol production. It's not just a matter of what are we eating that produces cholesterol, but rage and hostility and not handling our anger well can increase the cholesterol in our body, and certainly can increase the likelihood that if our cholesterol is bad, we're going to have that heart attack. So we need to be watching that. Have you got anything else in your book? Because I've still got more on my list.
Dr.
And I don't
Colbert,
want to just...
he really gets into it all. He said, in a 1980 study, Dr. Redford Williams and his colleagues at Duke University demonstrated that getting a high score on a 50-item hostility test was positively correlated with the severity of coronary artery disease.
So time and time again, The thing to be concerned about, especially with issues of the heart, is and our circulatory system, is our levels of rage and how are we handling the things that upset us. And these are patterns we've learned from a long time. But haven't you noticed that many times when people get the prognosis of a fatal disease, that they've got a disease, they've got to deal with it, a lot of times they'll deal with some of the issues so that they can live in more peace and then surprise everyone with an extended lifestyle.
That's right.
There are things that we can do to finally, and it was the title that you read, What's Worth Dying For? If we could all realize that our health is dependent upon what the emotional life we trap inside of us or are released to live in, if it's that good and joyful kind of life that little children enjoy and that God lavishes upon those who trust in Him, then we'll have a lifestyle that will begin producing better health.
You know, it's really exciting, a show like this, or you go on the internet, you can start searching for the mind-body connection. And it is now starting to come to light what we think, how we process those emotions really truly are affecting our bodies. It is like what you mentioned earlier, the cortisol. It's like taking a garden hose and watering your shrubbery, which the flow of the water is fine because that's what it's meant to do. But if you take a fire hose and you try to water that same shrubbery, it's going to destroy it. So the little bit of amounts of cortisol that go into our body, the flow is the way it's supposed to be. But when these deadly emotions come in excess amounts, the rage and the hostility and the anger, fear, that's like putting a fire hose inside of you, and it's going to rip you apart.
Well, it sure is, and there are consequences that show up in our health that are being well described by science. But if all of this is upsetting you folks, take a relaxation break right now. We have a wonderful song by our good friend Cecilia Tomko in Nashville, Tennessee. She's going to be singing about the mercy of the Son. Enjoy the music, and we'll be back after the break.